Come on in. This is going to be really easy. We're going to ease you into the afternoon. We're going to show you a movie. We're going to show you some production at the Production Summit. We're going to show you the production, then we're going to tell you how we made the production, and then we're going to talk about that for a little bit. The main thing that you're going to see here, and the enabling technology, is Chaos's real-time ray tracing. The real-time ray tracing that has been turned on by NVIDIA, DLSS 3.5, thank you very much, allowed us to have 5 environments. We shot over 3 days. We did 30 setups. We crashed 0 times. We got everything that we needed, and it was a lot of fun. So we'll talk about that after we see the show. But that's what you're looking at, is everything that you see in virtual production, and there's a lot of virtual production in this piece, is fully ray traced. Let's kill the lights up front, pretty please. And everything you're about to see and hear is fully ray traced.
Are you projected the
I know where you live, Eric. Well.
All right, while we're waiting, I'm going to give away some prizes. So, who's got some questions? Questions for the day? Anybody? All right, we got one right here.
Hi, Jess. Thank you, Jess. This might be the very inappropriate question. The guy over at Stable Diffusion was saying, you know, you should just be rendering in a proxy, send it through Stable, and it'll look ray traced and beautifully realistic without having to wait on the render time that may be. How do you respond to that?
Well, ray tracing.
I have his name if you need to go get that.
Hey, listen. What you're feeling, what you're all feeling, is people engaging with this new technology, this new stuff. It's the birth of a new storytelling platform. That's what's happening. Now, the ethics, I can't wait to see how all the lawsuits sort of where all that lands. But I'm here to tell you, the technologies that everyone is getting their hands on right now is democratizing in a way that I've never seen before. And it's not like coming, it's already here. And you're gonna see a lot of that stuff appearing certainly next year. But stuff like this, ray tracing, well, step 1, 3.5, well, that was great. A machine learned algorithm that allows you to ray trace in real time. You think 4.0 is gonna be slower? It's not. The question is, what factor of speed increase are we going to get when we hit DLSS 4.0? And what will that engender? So we'll get into all of that after the show. And do you think we're ready to go, guys? Almost.
All right, we're going to do another question right here.
Asking for a friend. What is ray tracing?
I am not going to answer that question.
There you go, there's your prize. Thank you.
Because the man whose vision of real-time ray tracing is sitting right here. Stand up just for a second, Chris, just so they can see you. That is Chris Nichols from Chaos. He's the guy who called me up and said, James, you know a little bit about virtual production, and I do. I tried to convince him that it's not something he wanted to get into. But after talking to him and talking to Vlado, the inventor of V-Ray, they were determined and dedicated, and we actually did the proof of concept back in March on this very stage. It's hard to describe, but it was the moment where you realize that I can go to every single marketplace asset that I ever wanted to get my hands on, turn it into a V-Ray scene file, and then just start using it on the wall. So from download to wall, 30 minutes. And the artist of origin, in any production workflow, the virtual art department, instead of being someone who receives another artist's work and then changing it to put into virtual production, this workflow was straight from the artist right onto the wall. It's a very different way of working, and it looks a lot better. I think we're almost there. All right, one more question? Who's got one?
We're going to do one more question up here.
Rosa Costanza.
I'm coming to you. They told me not to go near the speakers to hurt your ears.
Okay. I'll try to stop feedback from happening. But I have a question. I want to use LED wall technology and have a mix of environments that come from practical, perhaps plate shots, as well as Unreal Engine created or software created environments. So how would ray tracing help me when using LED walls and having a mixture of different source material?
Right. So Unreal does some amazing things, and there's certain things that I need to do only in Unreal. It's an amazing emulator, an amazing simulator, and there's certain things that I would go to for particle work, that sort of thing. If I just wanted to go and to the army of my comrades who were able to create environments, and I don't have to say, hey, do you know Unreal? It's a much better option for my budget and for me and for my time to just take any one of those assets, any of those proven artists, and just go straight to my show. So I would say that you can use as any of the sources, Inkscape, Maya, Houdini, Max, any of them, and play around in this space. And it's not just, virtual production is not just this wall, folks. You realize that by now, right? It's tracking. And all that's going to be on steroids next year with the stuff that's coming around the corner. But let's get into it a little bit later. I just got the thumbs up. Let's roll.
Howdy, I'm Chris Nichols. You might remember me from V-Ray IRL. Back then, we're talking about how amazing VFX technology has gotten. But now I'm wondering, have we lost track of what it's all about?
Everybody free!
Kiss the ground! Why so blue? Fork it over, Pandora. How we looking?
Looking good!
Wait a second. Eric, I got plaster in my eye. Do you have a damp cloth?
Get him a rag, would you?
Give him a cloth. Come on.
Yeah. It's right there. It's right, just fell right on me. I got this. I got it. I see you.
Yeah, boy!
We had to show you that I saw a lot of you. Is that Scott Ross? And yeah, that was Scott Ross. And for those of you in the VFX business, you probably knew that half of the VFX industry was represented there in one form or another. We had a lot of fun making this thing, and it was there's a whole story behind it. I want to get the conversation going by showing you behind the scenes really quick, and then we'll invite the filmmakers up.
Howdy.
I'll tell you this. Running in cowboy boots, I don't recommend that. It's a little hard.
And roll stage, please. Roll sound, please. We're rolling. Roll camera. And 3, 2, 1, action.
We had a great time making the original IRL. And the original IRL is, as much as we could do with absolutely nothing to work with as we could. And the limitations were very, very extreme.
Daniel Thron and I are part of a podcast called Martini Giant, along with Eric Sheely, for this virtual production project. When we come back to classic filmmaking that was really big in Hollywood, Western just made sense.
In this, we're talking about how important it is to shoot things for real. But we're shooting them for real on a stage stage live in virtual production. Virtual production involves tracking a physical camera in production and having a virtual camera in CG doing exactly the same thing in real time, which is being projected on the LED wall.
These are guys from Orbital. They've been sitting here. They've been working really hard to make sure everything's working. In this control room is basically where all of the wall is happening, and they can see right here what's actually being shot.
With virtual production, you can change things to catch new ideas in a way that you couldn't with old technologies that were very locked from a single perspective, because we can move the camera around and things change in the background according to where the lens is. It allows you the freedom of shooting in a real place and really lets you make a movie on the stage.
A lot of times the only way to do computer graphics in real time was to use something called rasterized rendering. You can make things look real, but it takes a lot of effort to get there.
Ray tracing involves simulating the way that rays, in this case light, bounce around the scene to illuminate it.
When you get real-time ray tracing, it's the way light naturally works, so you don't have to worry about it. So ray tracing has to be part of the virtual production experience.
You can see the lights traveling over reflective surfaces. You can see details in the background bouncing off of glass here or off of chrome here. It's like you're really there. And the more the background and the actors connect, the more you buy into what the scene is.
Here's one thing surprising. When you're moving through that environment and you're looking out the window, you really feel that you're in a train. And when it's going around the turn, I was holding on because I actually felt like I was going around a turn. So that was kind of exciting.
I designed all the sets that we're using and then worked with the builders on the sets. We made the train set kind of multifunctional, both a luggage car and a regular bar car set. It's been great to see the sets and everything come to life.
On the screen, we have the virtual world in which we are being chased by virtual bad guys.
It's a big scene, very long. It's like 4 kilometers big, 2.8 trillion triangles. The train rolls like 2 minutes through the prairie, goes over a gorge, a big bridge. It's ray traced and it's live. It's like the real deal.
We have one of the best sets I've ever seen, and our DP is notably excellent.
Once I gained a full understanding of what we were trying to achieve and what the technology was capable of, it opened a whole new horizon for me that I'm actually quite glad to be a party of.
Ball back to 0, roll ball. Okay, everybody settle, and train.
This is such an advance over green screen simply because you can see it live. And you can see what's happening without having to wait for a composite to be brought in front of you that doesn't ever really match what you anticipated in your mind. And once you can see it and actually bake it in at the time of exposure, it's an enormous step forward for people that do what I do.
It's allowing us to get like a lot of great material with a great consistent look very quickly. We literally, on some of the running sequences, we can just twist the sky at the turn of a button.
Come over here. I want to introduce you guys to my creative guys.
Everybody in the movie is associated with visual effects in some way, one way or another. Big-time VFX people who have contributed huge amounts to the industry.
This here, right here, is my good friend Daniel Buck. We cast him because he pretty much looks the part.
This coat is very hot, but I'm having fun.
How did Chris convince you to be part of this?
He said he wouldn't release the pictures he has of me. That was pretty convincing.
So Vlado, how many lines did you have? Just one line.
The best way to write the software is to put it in production. Being able to see the software being used on the stage, that's a whole different experience.
Chris calls me and says, we're gonna do, I said, I don't care, I'm in, let's go. He goes, but you're wearing the green unitard. And I said, I'm still in.
I just need to make sure that Rob was made to look as ridiculous as possible.
We wanted to sort of isolate old school tech for VFX and incorporate these ideas into the Old West setting. So we have like the chrome ball, and the bartender is wearing Avatar-esque camera rig around his head, and we have the classic green screen suit guy.
So we are dressing up Mr. Niederhorst here in his green screen outfit. He has been shot at least 3 or 4 times. So we asked Meredith to just make him look the most f***ed up.
And anything that we could do to bring these completely out of place items and sort of place them in the past where they kind of deserve to be at this point.
And action.
Going from like small scale robbery in the first version to large scale Western cinematic craziness is the kind of jump that we really wanted to make. And we think that's the kind of jump that the technology lets you do. By using a virtual production backdrop, we have so much more opportunity to make the experience richer and more elaborate and more cinematic than before.
Like I've been waiting for this for 10 years.
You coming? Okay, going back to one, please.
Yeah, guys, come on up. May I introduce you to Chris Nichols. You got to come all the way around here. We did this the other way. Chris Nichols, Dan Thron, and the Richard Crudo. Chris has been working in visual effects for over 30 years. Is currently at Chaos and is really the visionary behind real-time ray tracing. Has been waving his arms excitedly for 10 years, saying, no, we can do this, right?
Yeah, that's partially true. I mean, I just think that, what we do in computer graphics has been sort of sidelining filmmakers for a long time, right? Everything is like fix it in post, right? And I used to think about how much, the Hollywood has bad-mouthed CG for so long. And really what it comes down to is they sit there on a giant blue screen and shoot a couple of actors and ask them to look at things that aren't there and said, hope for the best. And then 9 months later, they get a movie that they hope that looks like what they thought it was going to look like. And it doesn't enable filmmakers to be filmmakers anymore. And when you actually take this, instead of blaming computer graphics, just put the tools in their hands and let them do the filmmaking live on set and at work. So ray tracing is the proper way to do things because that's the way light actually works. And if you're going to give someone like Richard Crudo good lighting, you better have good virtual production as well. So,
thanks, Chris. I'm going to leap over you and go straight to Richard. Tell us a little bit about, first of all, just to let you know, Richard Crudo, 6-time president of the ASC, goes all the way back to, I think, pulled focus on Raising Arizona, but Justified. I think we've all been enjoying his work for a long, long time. Please tell us what your experience was like in this environment.
Well, to put it in a word, it was two words, utterly painless. So many times in the past, it was mentioned in some of the background material, we dealt with green screen. I've had a lot of experience with that, and I've never really, or it's been a rare experience when I've been happy with what I've seen with that. And that's mostly the fault of the composite work. Here we had real action happening in real time on a set that was actively being photographed, and I was seeing everything on the monitor, basically. So the challenge was managing the color space between the wall, the sensor and the camera, the monitor to be calibrated properly, and then the post house. So what I'm looking at photographically on the monitor is pretty much, not pretty much, it's exactly what it's going to be in the end. And any discrepancies or any things that violate my sense of taste can be addressed immediately and fixed or corrected in the moment, and then signed off on and forgotten, moved on to the next thing. It happened so easily and painlessly, thanks to you guys, certainly, but the technology was bulletproof out of the box for the time that we did this entire thing.
And finally, Daniel Thron. Daniel and I go way back to the time of DD. But he's a writer-director, and if you ever get a chance to listen to their podcast, Martini Giant, it's some guys talking 3 hours about a 2-hour movie. It's a lot of fun. But also the podcast CG Garage, which if you're ever given the honor to be interviewed by Chris for CG Garage, you should do it. He's collecting all of you. But Dan, could you just tell me exactly what your experience was like making this production and how it came together for you?
Well, I'm just going to end up echoing what these guys have said, but I think I'm the least technically knowledgeable one on the stage by a million miles.
That is true.
And so I'm sort of the guinea pig here because if someone who doesn't know anything about ray tracing and someone who doesn't know anything about the technology that's being put up on the screen can get there and trust that it's all going to work as quickly as it does and as beautifully as it does, that's the biggest win. Because then, as Richard said, like it's really just, at that point, you're just back to saying, this is what I like, this is what I want, and this is what we're getting done, and like you're not kicking the can down the road, and I feel like a lot of big movies have suffered because the nature of visual effects means that you don't make creative decisions up front on your movie, and you sort of back end everything, and that just heaps up on the artists. It makes it harder on them. I've been one of those artists before, and it's very hard to work in that situation. And when you're actually shooting, you can't be sure of what you're getting, and you have to trust in that the producers down the line will do it right. But like Chris said, that this is all about filmmaking, being in it on the day, and making real artistic decisions as opposed to technical struggles.
So we had an incredibly aggressive schedule, and the AD, who you saw there, what was his name again? I can't remember yes. Ben Hansford.
Ben Hansford, yep.
Yeah, just a gung-ho guy, was telling us, look, you're in virtual production, you're gonna have to bake in about an hour and a half of downtime while the VP wall reboots and that sort of thing. There was none of that, and we were able to take what the project itself and run it in real time. Let me be clear about what it is that you just saw. So when we're talking about running in real time, that train car normally is a bunch of plates that are rendered out and run as video on the wall. That's not what you saw. What you saw was a camera running through a 2.8 trillion poly project made by a company called The Scope, who makes these beautiful, beautiful environments for car companies, and we just ran the scene. And that's something unique and something that not many people have gotten the chance to do. But Arena is bringing this to the
actually, we should probably explain a little bit what the technology is and how it works. So so a lot of people who are familiar with virtual production are used to, at this point, a lot of people have been using game engines to do this. And that's been great. I mean, it's been really interesting to see that. The problem that a lot of people who are trying to use game engines is they have to involve an entirely new pipeline, an entirely new set of artists, and they have to involve virtual art departments that have to spend huge amounts of time converting data to work in game engines. And so you basically have two different pipelines, one for virtual production and one for post-production. So what we've done is we've used Vantage, which is our real-time version of V-Ray. V-Ray is I don't know if you guys know what V-Ray is, but V-Ray is a production post renderer for offline rendering. And so we create one asset for everything. It's the same, the train that you saw that's an all CG shot of the train going by, it's the same asset that we used for virtual production. And we used one thing for everything. We built, I think you said there was 5 sets. There was 5 different areas, but we actually had one big set that did the whole thing. We never optimized anything. That's why it's 2.8 trillion. We didn't need to optimize anything. That's because it's fully ray traced. So one thing for everything, and that really reduces how much time it takes to get to the wall and how much time you need to invest to prep your stuff, because then it just works.
When you Google ray tracing, and you will, there's a saying that will pertain to everything that you learn in this area, and that is, with ray tracing, polygons are free. And that's just not the case for something that takes on delivering this kind of imagery to the screen. Normally it's rasterized. So I think we should open it up.
We should, but before we do, can we just acknowledge James as an actor? Like,
oh my God, yes. Yes.
Because he was the heavy on this.
No.
No, he was, and when we said go big, and I think Dan gave him the direction of think Jackie Gleason from Smokey and the Bandit, and I think he pretty much nailed that. So let's.
M. Emmett Walsh, there was a bit of that in there. No, it was a lot of fun. It's something I've always been able to do, and I'd like to open it up to all of you for some questions. We have one right here, and do we have a mic runner? There
Yep, mic's coming.
There it comes. There's one over here.
Oh, you're going there.
No, he's over there.
Okay, we'll get to you.
Hi.
Hi, I have a question. Getting some feedback. So when you say that it's all in one set, what's the advantage of putting everything into one project, I guess?
Well, it's just the world we created, right? I mean, if we knew there was going to be a town, we knew there was going to be a train that needed to move by, so we just kind of mapped the world out the way we wanted it to be, and then we just needed to load it once, and then we used it all 3 days. So inside the bank is the same as on the train, is the same as you just move the camera around, just like you would be in the real world.
So Richard will start to be offered up different experiences in location scouting. And if you work with a company like The Scope, if you go onto the website, see what they're selling an entire 10 blocks, because we're living in a world where we can create things procedurally, city blocks. They can make 10 cities in a week. The streets are the same, and they'll just change the buildings, right? And in that environment where you can start making things like that, we can offer that up to Richard and say, sir, would you like to go on a location scout, and see where you want to shoot in this thing? So that's one of the benefits of creating a project which is, pretty big, but allows you to go in and not have to build just for where you're going to shoot, but build and then decide where you're going to shoot then.
Yeah, I would just add, it's very much like having, if you build a set plan for a movie, like you have, the apartment here, and then on the other side of that wall is the war zone, and on the other side of the wall is the spaceship cockpit. Like, you don't truck in the new thing. Like, it's all there waiting for you. And because, you have the scene loaded, and it's the whole Western town and everything in it, like, you don't have to waste time loading it and getting it to the wall. It exists. You just say, okay, let's go to the bank. And then you click, and you're at the bank.
I'm not saying that you necessarily have to work this way, because I want to open up to different bids, right? And so I want other contributors to come in. I don't need them all to live in the same project. I just don't care as much if they do.
And the whole thing was done in 3 days. So we shot all of that in 3 days, which is kind of amazing if you really think about that, right? And most people think that that's at least 5 or 6 days of shooting, right? And it wasn't. It was 3 days. So that right there saves you a ton of money, right? So.
Yeah, Richard.
I was just going to say, this is the thing, and I'm sure Richard will agree, is that the biggest thing, when I said make all your creative decisions early, it's like pre-production is where you make all your creative decisions. It's where you storyboard everything, it's where you say this is what it's going to be, that's what it's going to look like, how you're going to get through it. Then you work with your AD, and which in the amazing Ben Hansford, who is a great director in his own right. And he said, no, you don't want to shoot on one of these things. It's going to be a disaster. You're going to lose, hours and hours and hours resetting the stage. And he couldn't believe it when it worked. But all of the plan was going in fully decided. And you go into the shoot saying, these are the things that I want to get. And most of the time you go in there saying, okay, what do I have to cut when things don't work, right? And that's what Ben was warning me on. He's like, you're going to have to cut shots, so get ready to cut shots. And we worked out plans to cut shots just in case. We get there on the day, and we shoot. We had 30 setups per day, which is a lot. And we're working with non-actors, all sorts of other complications. And instead of having to cut shots, we got everything we wanted for 3 days straight. And we were able to capture things that hit us on the day. Richard would see something that looked really cool, so we'd get the shot. Because we had the time to get the shot, because nothing was breaking around us. And when you're directing, when you're making a movie, time is the only important thing.
Richard, your crew, it's just the success of our schedule was based on the level of expertise that you were surrounded by. Did it make it easier to work in this environment? Difficult? Again, expand on that.
Well, as Daniel just emphasized, the preparation was very thorough, and I think that was a key to a lot of it. But apart from that, just as a cinematographer, once you lock into the technology of the LED volume, The rest of the job is pretty much the same thing you've always done. You just have to light and match the environment that you're working within and be consistent with what you're doing. And once you've got the color management locked in, everything else becomes pretty much a playland. You can really go crazy with it. You can do everything you've ever done before, and sometimes more creatively and more quickly in many instances, in our case.
So I think we're going to go over to the ASC clubhouse at some point and start. We did for this film sort of mock out the shots and went through, but I think this next year we'll be able to see much of our show in, say, something like an iPhone or an iPad or something like that, and begin to have that sort of discussion and prep, because it's going to be available to all of you. Do we have another question?
I was going to project. Quick, small question. It seemed like there were a lot of lens flares going on when you were shooting things that were on the volume. Are you shooting at a virtual sun and getting a lens flare?
Daniel is the director. My job is to deliver his vision, and he likes flares. In this instance, in this context, I liked them too. Basically, just slipped a filter and a flare filter when we wanted to, and then put a practical unit in a spot where there's the one shot of Chris, sort of the profile, and you have that blast of blue flare that goes horizontally across, and the hot spot, which for all intents and purposes appears to be the sun. It was a lamp, and that's what projected it. And it was, if anything, it's a matter of taste. You could do it or not. And in this particular case, yes. And I think it enhanced the feeling of reality of it all too.
I think something that's really amazing that Richard did is, first of all, we gave him the look that we wanted was the spaghetti western, right? We wanted to get that look, which he totally nailed. But the other thing he did properly is that he wasn't afraid to overexpose the wall, right? So the wall looked bright. It looked hot outside because it was really bright. You don't actually try to, don't show it. I mean, we had beautiful clouds, all that stuff was there, but it was totally blown out, which is correct, right? And so that's the thing, is that you let the DP pick it and do his job, and he did the job he was supposed to do.
We really think that, definitely use this technology, but also hire geniuses.
Hire geniuses. But please hire geniuses.
That speaks, if I may, very quickly, that speaks to the issues that I've experienced previously, because rather than have to give a verbal description of what that hotter exterior looks like, I can set it to taste on the spot, and we can all sign off for it. Or Daniel says, no, hotter. Okay, we can do that, or less. And backing out the rest of the lighting from how the wall looks to get the wall right first, and then treat everything else separate, as a separate issue, riffing off that is really, I think, the secret to doing it effectively.
I mean, this is not, I mean, yes, this was a demo of technology, but we weren't actually trying to show the technology. We want you to see this and see the film and then realize later that there was a lot of technology. That was the point, so.
Yes, Brian Kwan.
Turns out we had the same question at the same time. Speaking of time, 3 days of shooting is great. How much and how involved was prep?
Can you walk us through how prep worked?
What's the last part?
Walk us through how prep worked.
So I was the virtual production producer and was waving my arms, going previs. And I had a certain thought about what that should look like, having worked on The Mandalorian. We didn't have Chris Williams and that whole group, but we did spend a lot of time going through every single scene, and you really sort of lent into that advice and took it seriously.
Starting with previs at Chris's house is really where this gets going, because that's where we understood the scale of everything that we had to put on the stage, and stepping through it. Like James is talking about, hopefully this year shooting through previs with our iPhones at the we did the first step and version of that, and that helped us and Eric Sheely lay out what was available on the set and the scale that we had to operate at.
It was basically sort of a large, it's about scale and time, right? So you're on a train ride, you got to figure out how long the train is, or how long it gets to the turn, and practically how it works out. So we basically just laid out where the town is, what the town looks like, where the bank is, and everything else, and just laid it out as blocks and prepping. And then the world was built from that, right? So we worked with the scope, as he mentioned before, and they are very, very quick at creating those environments. A lot of the houses were actually built from bought assets. We worked with a company called Kitbash 3D. They created a whole Western town. We just used that whole town, right? And the thing that's nice about, yes, there are asset stores for virtual production, but with V-Ray, there's been asset stores for V-Ray for 20 years. Evermotion, Turbo Squid, they all use V-Ray stuff. You can just throw those right into virtual production. So that's what we use. We just made a whole Western town, and we built the whole thing. All of the way that all those bushes and trees and all that stuff and the landscape, that was all done by the scope guys, and they built that whole thing with a combination of Maya, Houdini, and Max in like a week. Right? So that whole town was built in a week, and then we just threw it in there, and then it was done. So prep was that. And then we used the exact same environment because they're a car company that does running footage. They did running footage of a train, right? And it was perfect and just blended right into everything. So it all just worked. One asset for everything.
We have to thank the developers at NVIDIA for just leaning into this. They were not trying to solve virtual production. They were trying to do real-time ray tracing for other things. It just so happens that their work at Omniverse and the work on DLSS 3.5 just sunk right up with what V-Ray was doing.
Just so people understand, ray tracing is a very complicated problem that takes a lot of energy to create, because you're basically tracing the way rays and lights bounce around. And you can get so far, just like with a camera, and then you still have a very noisy image, right? But what was developed is there are certain types of denoisers that have been developed over the years that help. But DLSS 3.5 involved a new kind of denoiser called ray reconstruction that enabled a very clean image with very few samples. So I think we had like 1 or 2 samples per pixel that were used. So it's an extremely noisy image, and it comes in perfectly clean because of ray reconstruction. A good analogy that my good friend Lon from NVIDIA described is 7 out of every 8 pixels is AI generated, right? So we give it 1 pixel of what it's supposed to be, and it figures out the rest of them.
I was really shocked by that, actually, when you flipped it on and off,
And so it's that is how we were able to get 30, 60 frames a second with that much data on the screen at the resolution that you're seeing. So
I think we're coming close to time. Yes, sir. You have a question over there.
I'm coming.
Jess, how many more questions do we have? One more. Okay, great.
So in virtual production studios, a lot of time rendering is the least of your problems, and there's all sorts of other things going on, but it sounds like you haven't talked about it, but what is it that you guys did to avoid all the other problems that go wrong in running a wall?
Are you talking about the general production problems?
No,
just production?
If you're putting up images on a wall, there'll be tearing issues going on with the hardware itself.
So we did have problems, like we would throw up something that we realized we exposed an issue, like the telephone lines and that sort of thing, and and then also the pacing of certain assets as we changed the speed. Those types of problems we were able to address because the artist of origin was on set with us. So normally what happens to me is we go, oh no, that's wrong. I have to go back to the artist of origin, if it's not a total Unreal pipeline, and then I have to give them the note, tell the people I'll see them tomorrow, lose 8 hours, spend $15,000, go back all the way through the pipeline, cross my fingers I don't get another note, because usually I got another note, and I'd lose 2 days and $30,000. And all that went away.
Yeah, like there, because you still see, like when things are shot incorrectly, you see the limitations of the technology, right? But I think that happens a lot, even with professional cinematographers, because they run out of time when they're dealing with technology that gets in their way, and then they're just like, well, it looks a little gray, but we have to get the shot out. So that's why I keep on coming back to time, is that you get Richard looking through the lens, and he can tell when it looks right and when it looks wrong, when it looks beautiful, when it doesn't. And if it gives you the time to make it look right, that he can do it, right? And I feel like I think that there, no shade to Unreal and stuff like that, which has plenty of great uses. But in terms of actual day-to-day production, you're not there to simulate a world like a video game. Like, you're there to get shots. Like, that's the point. And I feel that most of the biggest bumps I see in other virtual productions aren't because the crew isn't talented, it's because they ran out of time.
One last one.
Speaking of time.
Oh, there. Okay, Jess. Thank you. I love it.
Thank you, gentlemen. We really appreciate your time. Can I call you the Colonel now, James?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for putting this on.
Oh, yeah. Round of
appreciate it.
applause for the gentlemen and their
so much,
film.
guys.